Prime Minister Ma'in Abdel Malik is in Riyadh to seek economic support. The European Union announces additional funding for Yemen. The UN mission to support the Hudaydah Agreement warns women and children tolerate the highest cost of the conflict. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Shaza Abdelbay. Prime Minister Ma'in Abdel Malik affirmed that the government still depends on the support of Saudi Arabia and other donors to save the economic situation. During the visit to the Saudi capital, Riyadh, Abdel Malik pointed at the need to improve the standard of living and to ease the suffering of the Yemeni people. The Saudi agency said the discussions with the Saudi officials focused on Riyadh's efforts and initiatives to achieve security, stability, and peace in Yemen, in addition to a number of issues and files of common interest. Finance Minister Salim bin Brake discussed in a virtual meeting with ambassadors of the European Union aspects of economic and financial support. The meeting dealt with the challenges facing the national economy and public finance and the dire effects that resulted from the fluctuation of exchange rates. Minister of Finance reviewed with EU ambassadors the challenges at the level of the economy in general and public finance in particular. The European Union announced the allocation of 75 million euros in additional financing for development in Yemen. Head of the Development Cooperation Department at the European Union mission to Yemen said this funding will be implemented through partner organizations working in the field of enhancing the livelihood of the vulnerable. It's expected that their projects will start in 2022 to create diverse economic opportunities for youth, women, and men. World Food Programme warned that buying of food supplies in Yemen became impossible for many people. It said inability to buy food is due to the low value of the local currency and the high prices. According to the World Food Programme, more than 812 million US dollars are required to cover the needs up to May 2022. The Yemeni citizen is involved between hunger and the greed of traders, along with the total absence of the role of authorities that do nothing to ease their suffering. The financial situation for the Yemenis is getting worse, even by changing prices of local currency and the manipulation of exchange companies. More on story is within this report.
Promising news coming from the provisional capital Aden. The Yemeni Rial traded at about 1,200 US dollar in an overrise after appointing a new board of the central bank. The news, however, didn't see any fruits among citizens who are still agonized under the brunt of a plethora of hardships. The Yemenis are facing these hardships with strikes and protests.
We are here for the second day in a row to stick to our demands. The employees staged this protest to ask officials and the government to hold those responsible accountable.
The prices of food supplies and basic needs have not seen any improvement in Aden and the rest of the liberated areas since last October, despite the continuous decline in the value of foreign currencies against the national currency over the past 2 weeks. Local sources accuse the exchange companies in Aden of looting citizens' money. They added that the continuation of speculation in the banking market has directly affected people, as food stores are still sticking to prices that were set 2 weeks ago.
We staged this protest to demand our share of the household gas cylinders. As we are the citizens and traders in a vital sector, we are overexhausted by buying from the black market. We buy the cylinder at 20,000 riyals. We, the restaurant owners, call upon officials to provide household gas cylinders in the official prices. We are forced to buy the single gas cylinder in the black market prices. This is an overburden on the restaurant owners and the citizens as well.
Yemeni officials are counting on friends in the Arab Gulf, the European Union, and other donors to provide more support which will contribute to alleviate human suffering and achieve economic stability. They are looking at projects and programs that could improve revenues, especially taxes and customs. The government said the 7-year war had changed demographic and social structure. New population centers had been formed as a result of the displacement of more than 4 million people. Those new factors in Yemen needs more work to provide necessary services such as education, health, electricity, and water.
The United Nations mission to Hodeidah warned that women and children continue to suffer from the hostilities in the southern districts of the governorate. UNMAHA appealed to all parties for de-escalation and for taking all measures to avoid damage of civilian life, injury to civilians, and damage to civilian objects. Government forces announced the killing of 14 militants of Houthi militia south of Ma'rib Governorate after they set a trap for them. In this context, the coalition announced it killed more than 300 members of the Houthi militia in northeastern Yemen after carrying out 29 operations in Ma'rib and Al Jawf during the past 24 hours. 2 children were killed in Al Durayhimi district south of Hodeidah. Nearby in Taz, a little girl was killed and 5 others were injured after the Houthi militia targeted civilians in Taz Governorate, southwest of Yemen. Local sources said the shelling targeted a car carrying IDPs in the Makbana district west of Taz. The joint forces shot down 2 Houthi militia drones in the governorates of Taz and Hodeidah. They reported that one of the 2 drones was for investigation and the other was loaded with explosives. Miyun Human Rights Organization received testimonies from civilians in Makbana district, west of Taz, confirming that the Houthi militia had turned them into human shields. Miyun outlined that Houthis are putting pressure on the leaders to recruit young men. The organization called on the international community to quickly put pressure on Houthi militia to spare civilians and their areas from danger. Massam demining project removed more than 2,600 mines during the 3rd week of December from different parts in Yemen. The number of mines that were cleared in December rose to around 6,000, bringing the number of mines that have been cleared since the start of Massam project so far to about 300 mines. Coming next. The world celebrates International Solidarity Day while the war has devastated everything in Yemen.
اضطرينا نحن نغادر من ذي وزحنا.
الله الله يستنقلكم يا محويتني لا الله يستنقل.
This is Yemen News. Welcome back. The war in Yemen has deepened the ties of the Iran-Houthi partnership. Iran has built a significant influence in Yemen since 2015, and Houthis have become an important arm of Iran's foreign policy. More on story is within this report.
Iran has increased its support recently to Houthi rebels dramatically. The US Justice Department announced last week that it has seized 2 large caches of Iranian arms, including 171 surface-to-air missiles and 8 anti-tank missiles destined for Houthi militia. The US Navy seized the weapons from 2 vessels in the Arabian Sea while conducting routine maritime security operations, said the Justice Department. Iran's Revolutionary Guard orchestrated the arms shipments, which were destined for the Houthis, it said. Further, the US government similarly seized the Iranian petroleum products from 4 foreign flag tankers in or around the Arabian Sea while en route to Venezuela. These actions represent the government's largest ever forfeiture of fuel and weapons shipments from Iran to rebel Houthis. The US, in the 2 cases, struck a resounding blow to the Iranian government and to the criminal networks affiliated with it. The war also bled into the surrounding waterways like the Red Sea and Bab el-Mandeb, which connects the sea to the Gulf of Aden. These waterways lead to Suez Canal and onto the Mediterranean Sea, making them crucial for international shipping and global energy supplies. Houthis have deployed drone boats into these waters, which can be piloted remotely and sent up to a target before detonating. These boats are suspected of being built with Iran's help. In the same line, the US Navy announced Wednesday it tested a laser weapon and destroyed a floating target in the Mideast, a system that could be used to count bomb-laden drone boats deployed by Houthi rebels in the Red Sea. Such a step by the American Navy is hugely commendable. Yet, the question remains, would that be enough to deter the Iranian aggression on Yemeni people?
Abusive detention, disappearance, and torture are parts of Houthi practices against prisoners. More on story is within this report.
Few days and a new year will begin for Yemenis, and the prisons are still overcrowded with thousands of detainees and those who are hidden in various prisons, especially those in areas controlled by the Houthi militia, to escalate warnings and reports of a real catastrophe for prisoners, who are deprived of the most basic human rights, healthcare, and winter clothes. The Association of the Abductees' Mothers called on the Red Cross mission to visit the prisons and inspect the conditions of detainees there, especially the sick, denouncing the inhumane conditions of detention in all prisons, denouncing medical negligence, deprivation of winter clothes, and preventing the entry of medicine and food to the prisoners and detainees. For 7 years, more than 620 of the kidnapped, arbitrarily detained, and forcibly displaced are still living in deteriorating conditions on all sides, especially with the arrival of winter, which makes them vulnerable to repeated cold strikes and deprived of their simplest rights. Some of them even died as a result of chronic diseases and loss of health care. The Houthi militia topped the list of the highest violations and the practice of kidnapping and arbitrary arrest, where hundreds of forcibly disappeared civilians, including 3 women, all live in deteriorating conditions in prisons with the increase of the severe cold wave that caused many to suffer from various diseases. A human rights report in the trust of a monitoring team documented that nearly 1,650 detainees were subjected to various types of physical and psychological torture and cruel treatment inside the prisons of the Houthi militia, including 109 children and 33 women distributed in 17 governorates.
The world celebrates International Solidarity Day while the war in Yemen has caused the worst humanitarian crisis in modern time, according to the UN. War affected almost every single family nationwide, and the number of displaced people as well as refugees has risen dramatically. More on story is within this report.
Every year on December 20th, International Human Solidarity Day seeks to celebrate the world's unity in diversity. It's also a day to raise awareness about the importance of solidarity. The main goal of it is to recognize the universal value of solidarity by making member states aware of global objectives and initiatives to reduce poverty and to formulate and share poverty reduction strategies of independent nations around the world. The UN is convinced that solidarity creates a spirit of sharing, which is essential for eradicating poverty. However, upon looking at the situation in Yemen, the protracted conflict has led to urgent, widespread humanitarian and development crisis and resulted in significant damage to the economy, physical infrastructure, service provision, health and education systems, as well as social fabric. It has also caused hundreds of thousands of deaths. While many of these are the result of war's direct violence, others are due to the war's indirect effects, including a lack of food and degraded living conditions. The number of deaths caused both directly and indirectly from the conflict by the end of 2021 is estimated to be 377,000 deaths, nearly 60% of which are indirect and caused by issues associated with conflict, like lack of access to food, water, and health care. The impact of the conflict continues to be devastating. When comparing Yemen's current situation to a scenario without conflict, the country has lost a cumulative $126 billion in potential gross domestic product since 2015. In addition, 15.6 million people have been pushed into extreme poverty and 8.6 million people into undernutrition. If conflict continues, it will become even more destructive. If war in Yemen continues through 2030, 1.3 million people is estimated to die as a result, with more than 70% of those deaths being from indirect causes. Most of these indirect deaths are children under the age of 5. By 2030, a child will die because of the conflict every 5 minutes. Yemenis need the full support to be able to stand on its feet again. This doesn't erase the pain and the loss that has been suffered by Yemenis so far, but can help ensure a prosperous future for all Yemenis going forward. In the end, on the occasion of the International Day of Human Solidarity, will the world pay attention to the suffering of Yemenis in light of the continuing war, economic collapse, and famine that have killed millions of them?
The National Committee Against Coronavirus recorded 1 new case of the pandemic. Also, 3 recovered cases were recorded. With the current updates, the total confirmed cases are 10,102, including 1,977 deaths and 6,976 cases of recovery. Here's a reminder of the main headlines. Prime Minister Ma'in Abdel Malik is in Riyadh to seek economic support. The UN mission to support the Hudaydah Agreement warns women and children tolerate the highest cost of the conflict. This is the end of the news. Thank you for watching.